When my mother announced to our entire extended family at Christmas dinner that I was her biggest disappointment, I simply reached into my purse, pulled out an envelope, and placed it in front of her. What happened next changed our family dynamics forever and taught me the most valuable lesson about self-worth I have ever learned. My name is Elena Martinez, and this is the story of how one moment of brutal honesty from my mother became the catalyst for the most empowering transformation of my life. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The story I am about to share with you began long before that Christmas dinner, though I did not recognize the patterns until much later. For 28 years, I had built my entire identity around being the dependable daughter, the one who sacrificed her own dreams to ensure my family's stability and happiness. What I discovered that December evening was that my sacrifices had not earned me love and respect, but rather contempt and exploitation from the people I trusted most. My journey toward that life-changing moment started when I was 18 years old, fresh out of high school with dreams of attending veterinary school. I had worked throughout my teenage years, saving every dollar from my job at the local pet clinic, building toward a future where I could care for animals and run my own practice. My acceptance letter to Colorado State University's veterinary program represented everything I had worked toward, complete with a partial scholarship that would make my dreams financially viable. However, 2 weeks before I was scheduled to begin college, my father suffered a massive heart attack that left him unable to work for an extended period. Our family's financial situation, already precarious due to my parents' poor money management and my mother's inconsistent employment history, became desperate. The medical bills mounted quickly, and our modest home in suburban Phoenix faced foreclosure proceedings within months. My mother, Carmen Martinez, approached me with tears in her eyes and a request that would reshape the trajectory of my entire life. She explained that the family needed my college fund to survive the financial crisis. My younger brother, Miguel, then 16, showed exceptional promise as a musician and had been accepted into an expensive private arts academy. My sister, Isabella, 14 at the time, required expensive medical treatment for her chronic asthma condition. The family needed my sacrifice to preserve everyone else's opportunities. "Elena, mija, you are so smart and capable," my mother said, holding my hands while tears streamed down her face. "You can always go to college later, but your brother and sister need help now. You are strong enough to handle this responsibility. We are counting on you to save our family." The weight of their expectations and my own sense of duty overwhelmed any resistance I might have offered. I deferred my veterinary school acceptance, cashed in my college fund, and took a full-time position as a medical office administrator to provide immediate income for our household expenses. I told myself this sacrifice was temporary, that I would return to my educational goals once our family stabilized financially. 10 years passed before I fully understood that my temporary sacrifice had become a permanent lifestyle. During that decade, I worked consistently in medical administration while taking night classes at the local community college, slowly accumulating credits toward a degree I was never able to complete due to family financial emergencies that repeatedly required my attention and resources. Miguel flourished at his private academy and eventually earned a full scholarship to the prestigious Berklee College of Music in Boston. His musical talent developed into genuine professional opportunities, and by age 26, he was touring internationally with established recording artists while building his own career as a composer and performer. His success brought pride to our family and validation for the investment we had made in his education. Isabella's medical condition improved significantly with proper treatment, and she excelled academically throughout high school. She received multiple scholarship offers for college and ultimately chose to attend the University of Southern California to study journalism. Her articles began appearing in major publications while she was still an undergraduate, and her career trajectory pointed toward significant success in media and communications. Meanwhile, I remained in Phoenix, working administrative positions that paid well enough to support my ongoing contributions to family expenses, but offered limited opportunities for advancement or personal fulfillment. My veterinary dreams faded into distant memory as practical responsibilities consumed my time and energy. I convinced myself that my siblings' successes justified my sacrifices and that their achievements reflected positively on our entire family. My personal life suffered considerably during these years of family-focused living. Romantic relationships proved difficult to maintain when every available dollar and most of my free time went toward family obligations. I dated sporadically, but found it challenging to explain why a woman approaching 30 still lived at home and contributed most of her income to household expenses, rather than building her own independent life. The pattern of sacrifice became so ingrained that I no longer questioned its fairness or sustainability. When Miguel needed equipment for his recording studio, I provided a loan that was never repaid. When Isabella required a reliable car for her internships, I co-signed the loan and made most of the payments when her part-time income proved insufficient. When my parents decided to refinance their mortgage to access equity for home improvements, I served as a guarantor on the loan, putting my own credit and financial future at risk. My mother's attitude toward my contributions evolved in ways that should have concerned me, but instead became normalized through repetition. Initially, she expressed genuine gratitude for my sacrifices and acknowledged the difficulty of my position. Over time, however, her appreciation transformed into expectation, and eventually into a sense of entitlement that treated my financial support as her right rather than my generous choice. "Elena, the property tax bill came today," she would announce casually, placing the envelope on the kitchen counter where I would see it when I returned from work. "It is due next month." There was no request in her tone, no acknowledgement that she was asking me to pay a bill for property I did not own. The expectation that I would handle such expenses had become so routine that explicit requests were no longer necessary. This dynamic extended beyond financial contributions to encompass most practical responsibilities within our household. I managed the family's health insurance paperwork, coordinated medical appointments for my parents, handled communications with utility companies and service providers, and served as the primary point of contact for any situation requiring organization or follow-through. My siblings, both successful in their respective careers, remained curiously unavailable for such mundane family responsibilities. The most troubling aspect of this arrangement was how my competence and reliability were simultaneously valued and resented by my family members. They needed my contributions to maintain their lifestyle and pursue their ambitions, but they also seemed to view my predictable availability as evidence of my failure to achieve anything more significant with my life. My mother began making subtle comments about my living situation and career choices that revealed her growing disdain for the very stability she depended upon. "Look at Miguel's latest review in Rolling Stone," she would say, showing me articles about his musical achievements. "And Isabella just got promoted to senior staff writer. I am so proud of how well my children are doing." The implication that my siblings were her successful children while I occupied some other category became increasingly obvious over time. These comments stung, but I rationalized them as my mother's way of expressing pride in her children's accomplishments without intending to diminish my own contributions. I told myself that she valued my sacrifices, even if she did not express that appreciation in ways I might prefer. The possibility that she genuinely viewed my choices as failures rather than sacrifices was too painful to consider seriously. My work life provided some respite from family dynamics, though even there, my situation drew attention and sometimes concern from colleagues and supervisors. Dr. Patricia Henderson, the physician I worked for most recently, had known me for 5 years and watched my career stagnate despite my obvious competence and work ethic. "Elena, you have more organizational skills and medical knowledge than most people with formal healthcare degrees," she told me during my annual review. Have you considered pursuing nursing school or healthcare administration certification? I would be happy to provide references and recommendations for any program you choose. Her encouragement meant more to me than she probably realized, but practical obstacles made such pursuits seem impossible. Nursing school would require full-time study that I could not afford while maintaining my family financial contributions. Healthcare administration programs demanded time and money that were not available given my current obligations. I thanked Dr. Henderson for her support and filed her suggestions away with other deferred dreams. The community college courses I managed to complete sporadically over the years provided intellectual stimulation and reminded me of my academic capabilities, but progress toward any meaningful credential remained frustratingly slow. A biology course here, a chemistry class there, never building toward a cohesive program that might lead to career advancement or personal fulfillment. My transcripts told the story of someone with significant potential but no clear direction or sustained commitment to any goal. My social life contracted accordingly as friends from high school moved away for college or career opportunities, while I remained anchored in Phoenix by family responsibilities. Social media provided painful reminders of paths not taken as former. Classmates shared photos from medical school graduations, veterinary practice openings, and career achievements that represented alternative versions of my own life. I learned to avoid such platforms during periods when the contrast between their progress and my stagnation felt particularly acute. The few close friendships I maintained required careful management to avoid excessive discussion of my family situation. My best friend from high school, Jennifer Chen, had become a successful pediatric nurse practitioner and often expressed concern about my living arrangement and career trajectory. "Elena, I love your family, but you are almost 30 years old," she said during one of our monthly dinner meetings. "When are you going to start living for yourself instead of managing everyone else's problems? You are incredibly capable, and you deserve to have your own goals and achievements." Jennifer's perspective helped me recognize that my situation appeared problematic to outside observers, even those who knew and appreciated my family. However, changing deeply entrenched patterns felt overwhelming, particularly when my financial support had become essential to my family's standard of living. The logistics of extricating myself from various loan guarantees and financial commitments seemed complex and potentially damaging to relationships I valued. Moreover, my mother had developed increasingly sophisticated methods for maintaining my compliance with family expectations. She alternated between expressions of gratitude that made me feel valued and guilt-inducing reminders of family obligations that made independence seem selfish. When I occasionally mentioned possibilities for career change or educational pursuits, she responded with concerns about timing and family needs that made such plans seem impractical or inconsiderate. "Of course you should pursue your dreams, mija," she would say when I mentioned potential nursing programs. "But maybe wait until Miguel finishes his album recording project. He really needs our support right now, and you know how much stress affects his creativity. After he gets established, then you can think about school." These responses felt reasonable in isolation, but created a pattern of perpetual deferral where family needs always took precedence over my personal goals. Miguel's recording project would be followed by Isabella's graduate school applications, which would be followed by my parents' retirement planning, which would be followed by some other family priority that required my continued sacrifice and support. The Christmas season when everything changed began like many others, with my mother planning an elaborate family gathering that showcased our holiday traditions and brought together extended family members from across the Southwest. She took great pride in these events, which highlighted her role as family matriarch and demonstrated the success and stability she had achieved through careful management of family resources, including my contributions. Preparations for Christmas dinner required extensive coordination and financial investment that fell primarily to me, as had become customary over the years. I arranged for catering supplements to my mother's cooking, purchased gifts for extended family members, and handled logistics for accommodating overnight guests in our modest home. The celebration represented a significant expense that would require careful budgeting for several months afterward, but family traditions held paramount importance in my mother's value system. Miguel flew in from Boston, full of excitement about his latest recording contract and upcoming European tour dates. Isabella drove up from Los Angeles, having just received a promotion that positioned her for rapid advancement in her media career. Both siblings appeared happy, successful, and confident in their life trajectories, their achievements serving as testimony to the wisdom of family investments in their education and career development. Extended family members would include my mother's sisters and their families, my father's brother and his wife, and several family friends who had become honorary relatives over the years. These gatherings provided opportunities for my mother to highlight her children's accomplishments and demonstrate the effectiveness of her parenting and family management strategies. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I looked forward to these celebrations despite their considerable cost and effort because they represented rare opportunities to spend quality time with Miguel and Isabella, whose busy careers limited our regular contact. Their presence transformed our household dynamic and reminded me of happier periods when we functioned as a cohesive family unit working toward shared goals, rather than a collection of individuals with competing priorities. However, as Christmas approached, I began noticing subtle changes in how family members discussed my role and contributions during event planning conversations. References to my responsibilities were stated with less appreciation and more assumption than in previous years. My siblings spoke about family financial matters as though my contributions were automatic and permanent rather than voluntary and temporary. Most concerning, my mother began making comments about my future that suggested she viewed my current situation as permanent rather than transitional. "Elena will handle the gift coordination like always," she told my aunt during a planning phone call I overheard. "She is so good at managing details, and she does not have other commitments that would interfere with family responsibilities." The comment revealed how my mother had come to view my life as a resource available for family use rather than as an independent existence with its own value and potential. The assumption that I lacked other commitments because I chose to prioritize family needs suggested that she saw my sacrifices as evidence of limited options rather than generous choices made on behalf of people I loved. This perspective became more apparent as Christmas week progressed and family members arrived for the celebration. Miguel and Isabella received enthusiastic attention and admiration for their career achievements, while my contributions to making the gathering possible were acknowledged briefly and then forgotten. The contrast highlighted how differently my choices were perceived compared to my siblings' decisions to pursue their individual ambitions. The stage was set for a confrontation that would force all of us to examine the assumptions and expectations that had shaped our family relationships for over a decade. My mother's casual dismissal of my sacrifices and my siblings' comfortable acceptance of my support had created an unsustainable dynamic that required correction, though none of us recognized how dramatically that correction would unfold during what should have been a joyful holiday celebration. The envelope I would place in front of my mother at Christmas dinner contained documentation that would challenge every assumption our family had made about my role, my choices, and my future. The contents represented months of careful planning and decision-making that would fundamentally alter our relationships and force everyone to recognize the true cost of the sacrifices I had made on their behalf. What my family did not understand, and what I was only beginning to recognize myself, was that genuine love and respect cannot coexist with exploitation and contempt. The Christmas dinner confrontation would serve as a catalyst for establishing boundaries that protected my dignity while challenging my family to examine their treatment of someone who had given them everything they asked for and received criticism in return. The transformation that began that December evening would ultimately demonstrate that self-advocacy and boundary setting are not acts of selfishness, but necessary steps toward creating relationships based on mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice. My journey from accommodating daughter to empowered woman would prove that recognizing one's own worth is the foundation for demanding appropriate treatment from others, including family members who have become accustomed to taking advantage of generosity without reciprocating appreciation or support. The 3 months leading up to that fateful Christmas dinner revealed layers of family dysfunction that I had been too close to recognize clearly. October through December of that year marked a period when the careful balance I had maintained between family obligations and personal survival began to deteriorate under increasing pressure and diminishing appreciation. The mask of gratitude my family had worn for years began slipping, exposing attitudes and expectations that would ultimately force me to confront the reality of my situation. The first significant crack in our family facade appeared in early October when Miguel called from Boston with news about his record deal. His excitement was infectious as he described the multi-album contract he had signed with an independent label that specialized in contemporary jazz fusion. The financial terms were modest by industry standards, but they represented validation of his artistic vision and provided a foundation for building a sustainable music career. However, Miguel's celebration quickly shifted to a request that would test my financial limits once again. The record label required him to invest $15,000 in recording studio time, session musicians, and production costs for his debut album. While the label would cover marketing and distribution expenses, artists were expected to fund the actual recording process as a demonstration of their commitment to the project. "Elena, I know this is a lot to ask, but this is my big break," Miguel explained during our phone conversation. "The label executives specifically chose me because they believe my sound has commercial potential. If this album succeeds, I can pay you back everything I owe you and probably help with family expenses for the first time." His request placed me in an impossible position. My savings account contained exactly $18,000, money I had accumulated over 2 years of careful budgeting and overtime work. These funds represented my emergency cushion and my tentative plan to finally pursue nursing certification through an accelerated program I had researched extensively. Lending Miguel $15,000 would eliminate any possibility of educational advancement and leave me financially vulnerable to unexpected expenses. Yet refusing to support his career opportunity felt like betraying everything I had worked toward for our family. Miguel's success would vindicate the sacrifices we had all made for his musical education. His failure due to lack of funding would render meaningless the years of private lessons, academy tuition, and equipment purchases that had consumed such a significant portion of our family resources. I agreed to provide the loan with the understanding that repayment would begin within 6 months of the album's release. Miguel signed a promissory note that outlined the repayment schedule and interest terms, though we both knew that family loans rarely proceeded according to formal agreements. My decision to support his recording project depleted my financial reserves and eliminated my educational plans once again. But I convinced myself that his success would create opportunities for our entire family. The conversation with my mother about Miguel's loan revealed her evolving perspective on my role within our family structure. Rather than expressing gratitude for my continued sacrifice, she responded with relief that bordered on entitlement. "Thank goodness you were able to help him," she said, as though my financial contribution had been inevitable rather than generous. "Miguel has so much talent, and it would be tragic if he missed this opportunity because of money. You are always so practical about these situations, Elena. Some people are dreamers, and some people are supporters." Her characterization of our family roles troubled me more than I wanted to acknowledge. In her framework, Miguel and Isabella were dreamers whose aspirations deserved support and investment, while I was a supporter whose function was to enable their ambitions through my practical contributions. This division suggested that my own dreams and aspirations were less valuable or valid than those of my siblings. The pattern became more pronounced when Isabella called in November with her own financial crisis. Her journalism career had progressed rapidly, But the media industry's instability meant that her position at a major magazine was eliminated during corporate restructuring. While she had received modest severance pay and maintained freelance relationships that would provide income, her unemployment created immediate financial pressures that threatened her ability to maintain her Los Angeles lifestyle. Elena, I hate to ask this, but could you help me with rent for a couple of months while I transition to freelance work? Isabella requested during our phone conversation. I have several major assignments lined up, but the payment schedules are unpredictable. I just need to bridge the gap until my income stabilizes. Isabella's request for assistance was more modest than Miguel's, requiring only $3,000 over 2 months to cover her housing costs, while she established independent income streams. However, this additional financial obligation would stretch my already compromised budget to its breaking point. My reduced savings could accommodate the expense, but doing so would eliminate any remaining financial cushion and make me vulnerable to even minor emergencies. More concerning was my mother's reaction when I mentioned Isabella's situation during our weekly family phone call. Rather than acknowledging the burden these requests placed on my finances, she seemed annoyed that family financial problems continued to arise. Why do your brother and sister always have money troubles when they are supposed to be so successful? She complained, as though their financial challenges reflected poorly on her parenting rather than the normal uncertainties of creative and media careers. You never call asking for money, Elena. Why can you manage your finances properly when they cannot? Her comment revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of our respective situations. Miguel and Isabella were pursuing ambitious careers in competitive industries that offered significant potential rewards but limited financial security during early career stages. Their occasional need for family support reflected the risks inherent in their chosen paths rather than personal financial incompetence. My financial stability, by contrast, resulted from accepting predictable but limited employment that offered steady income in exchange for restricted advancement opportunities. I could manage my finances effectively precisely because I had abandoned ambitious career goals that might have created similar uncertainties. The comparison was fundamentally unfair, but my mother seemed unable to recognize the trade-offs that enabled my reliability. This conversation marked the beginning of my recognition that my family viewed my sacrifices as evidence of my limitations rather than my generosity. In their perception, I had chosen stable but unambitious employment because I lacked the talent or drive to pursue more challenging opportunities. My willingness to provide financial support reflected my practical nature rather than my commitment to their success. The implications of this perspective became more apparent as Christmas preparations intensified throughout December. My mother's planning for our family gathering included numerous references to my siblings' achievements and her pride in their success, while my contributions to making the celebration possible were treated as routine responsibilities rather than generous choices. Miguel will be able to tell everyone about his record deal, she announced excitedly while reviewing her guest list. And Isabella can share news about the freelance contracts she has secured with major publications. I am so proud of how successful my children have become. Her enthusiasm for showcasing their achievements contrasted sharply with her casual assignment of practical responsibilities to me. The coordination of catering, gift purchasing, house preparation, and guest accommodation fell to me without discussion or apparent recognition that these tasks required significant time, effort, and financial investment. Dr. Henderson at my workplace began noticing the stress these family demands created in my professional performance. My typically efficient work habits had become scattered as I managed phone calls about Christmas logistics, coordinated delivery schedules around my work hours, and handled financial transactions related to family expenses during my lunch breaks. Elena, you seem overwhelmed lately, she observed during a quiet moment in our medical office. Is everything manageable at home? You have been working here for 5 years, and I have never seen you this distracted during patient care. Her Concern forced me to acknowledge how significantly my family obligations were affecting other areas of my life. The financial pressure of supporting Miguel and Isabella while funding Christmas expenses had created constant anxiety about money. The time demands of holiday coordination left me exhausted and less focused during work hours. Most troubling, the emotional weight of feeling unappreciated despite my sacrifices was affecting my interactions with patients and colleagues. I assured Dr. Henderson that my situation was temporary and related to holiday stress, but privately I began questioning whether my current lifestyle was sustainable. The physical and emotional toll of constant family crisis management was becoming apparent to outside observers, suggesting that my coping mechanisms were less effective than I had believed. Jennifer Chen's perspective during our December dinner meeting provided additional confirmation that my family situation had become problematic. As my oldest friend, she had witnessed the evolution of my role within our family structure and expressed increasing concern about the one-sided nature of my relationships with my parents and siblings. "Elena, I need to say something that might be difficult to hear," she began carefully during our meal at a quiet restaurant we frequented for serious conversations. "I have watched you sacrifice your goals and financial security for your family for 10 years. During that time, Miguel and Isabella have built successful careers with your support. But what have you built for yourself?" Her question forced me to confront the reality that my decade of family support had created success for others while leaving me in essentially the same position I had occupied at 18. Miguel had achieved his musical ambitions, Isabella had established her journalism career, and my parents had maintained their lifestyle despite financial challenges. But my own dreams remained deferred and my personal achievements were minimal. "Your siblings are adults with graduate degrees and professional opportunities," Jennifer continued. "They should be contributing to family expenses rather than requiring your support. Your parents should be encouraging your career development rather than depending on your financial contributions. The dynamic you have accepted is not normal or healthy." Jennifer's assessment aligned with observations I had been avoiding for months. The requests for financial support from my siblings had become more frequent and less apologetic over time. Their repayment of previous loans had been sporadic and incomplete. Most concerning, their expressions of gratitude had diminished even as their expectations for my assistance had increased. Miguel's attitude toward the money I had provided for his recording project exemplified this shift. Initially, he had expressed genuine appreciation and acknowledged the sacrifice my loan represented. However, as his album production progressed, his references to my contribution became casual mentions rather than grateful acknowledgments. "The studio time Elena helped pay for is really making a difference in the sound quality," he mentioned during a family phone call, as though my $15,000 represented a minor contribution rather than my entire savings account. Isabella demonstrated similar patterns in her communications about the rent assistance I had provided. Her initial gratitude had given way to updates about her freelance success that seemed designed to justify my investment rather than acknowledge my generosity. "The magazine assignments are going really well," she reported during our phone conversations. "The contacts I maintained while living in Los Angeles are paying off with steady work opportunities." Her focus on her professional achievements, rather than the financial support that enabled her to maintain those contacts, suggested that she viewed my assistance as a business investment rather than a personal sacrifice. The distinction mattered, because it reflected her perception of our relationship and her obligations regarding repayment and appreciation. These subtle changes in my siblings' attitudes coincided with increasingly pointed comments from my mother about my life choices and future prospects. Her remarks had evolved from gentle suggestions about career development to more direct criticism of my apparent lack of ambition and personal achievement. "Elena, you are almost 30 years old," she observed during one of our conversations about Christmas planning. "When are you going to start thinking about your own future instead of just helping everyone else? You cannot live at home forever." The irony of her criticism was profound, given that my living at home enabled me to provide the financial support that maintained our family's standard of living. My reduced housing costs allowed me to contribute thousands of dollars annually to family expenses that would otherwise strain their budget significantly. However, she seemed unable to connect my residential choice with my financial contributions to our household. More troubling was her suggestion that my supportive behavior reflected a lack of personal ambition rather than a commitment to family welfare. She appeared to view my sacrifices as evidence that I was unable or unwilling to pursue independent success rather than choosing to prioritize collective family needs over individual achievement. This perspective became most apparent during conversations about my potential romantic relationships. My mother's comments about my dating life revealed her assumption that my single status reflected personal deficiencies rather than the practical challenges of maintaining relationships while managing extensive family obligations. "You need to put more effort into meeting someone," she advised during one particularly frustrating conversation. "Successful men want women who have their own goals and achievements. You spend too much time worrying about family matters instead of building your own life." Her advice ignored the reality that my family commitments consumed most of my discretionary time and income, making it difficult to invest in social activities or personal interests that might lead to meaningful relationships. The successful men she referenced would likely be attracted to women with educational achievements and career advancement that I had deferred to support family needs. The contradiction in her expectations seemed invisible to her. She simultaneously depended on my financial contributions and criticized me for the lifestyle choices that enabled those contributions. She wanted me to be more independent and ambitious while maintaining my role as the family's primary financial safety net. These accumulated tensions created an atmosphere of unspoken resentment that permeated our household as Christmas approached. My parents and siblings had become accustomed to my support while losing appreciation for its voluntary nature. Their expectations had transformed my generosity into obligation, and their criticism suggested that my sacrifices were evidence of personal failure rather than family commitment. The final weeks before Christmas dinner were marked by increasingly explicit expressions of dissatisfaction with my life choices from family members who had benefited most from those choices. Miguel made casual comments about my career stagnation. During family phone calls, Isabella shared unsolicited advice about personal development and goal setting. My mother's criticism of my living situation and relationship status became more frequent and pointed. The cumulative effect of these interactions was to undermine my confidence in the choices I had made for our family's benefit. Their lack of appreciation for my sacrifices was painful, but their active criticism of the lifestyle that enabled my support was devastating. I began to recognize that my family viewed me not as a generous contributor to our collective welfare, but as a cautionary example of unfulfilled potential and limited ambition. This recognition forced me to confront the possibility that my decade of sacrifice had not earned love and respect, but rather contempt and exploitation. The people I had supported financially and emotionally seemed unable to acknowledge my contributions or appreciate the costs those contributions had extracted from my personal goals and relationships. The envelope I would place on the Christmas dinner table contained documentation that would force my family to confront the reality of our financial relationships and the true extent of my contributions to their success. The contents would challenge their comfortable assumptions about my role and motivations while establishing boundaries that protected my dignity and financial security. What my family did not understand was that their criticism and lack of appreciation had finally pushed me beyond my tolerance for exploitation disguised as family obligation. The Christmas confrontation would mark the beginning of my transformation from accommodating family member to self-advocating individual who demanded appropriate recognition and treatment from people who had taken my generosity for granted for far too long. Christmas Day arrived with the crisp December morning that characterized Phoenix winters, bringing perfect weather for the family gathering that would forever change our relationships. I had awakened at 5 o'clock that morning, not from excitement about the holiday celebration, but from the persistent anxiety that had plagued my sleep for weeks. The envelope I had prepared 3 days earlier sat in my purse, containing documents that would either restore balance to our family dynamics or permanently fracture relationships that had sustained me through nearly 3 decades of life. The preparation for Christmas dinner had consumed the previous week with an intensity that exceeded even my mother's typically elaborate standards. Carmen had invited 23 people to our modest home, including extended family members, family friends, and neighbors who had become part of our holiday tradition over the years. The guest list represented her desire to showcase our family's success and stability to a community that had watched Miguel and Isabella grow from promising children into accomplished adults. My role in orchestrating this celebration had expanded significantly compared to previous years, though my mother seemed oblivious to the increased burden her planning had placed on my resources and schedule. The catering alone had cost nearly $2,000, money I had provided without hesitation despite my depleted savings account. The gift purchases for extended family members had required an additional $800, carefully budgeted from my December paycheck to ensure that our family appeared generous and thoughtful to our guests. The house preparation had demanded 40 hours of my time during the week leading up to Christmas, including deep cleaning, decorating, furniture rearrangement, and coordination of borrowed tables and chairs to accommodate our expanded guest list. My mother had supervised these activities with the attention to detail of an event planner, ensuring that every element met her standards for family hospitality and holiday elegance. Miguel had arrived from Boston on December 22nd, bringing enthusiasm about his recording project and stories about his expanding professional network in the music industry. His presence transformed the household atmosphere as my parents basked in his achievements and peppered him with questions about his upcoming album release and tour opportunities. The pride in their voices when discussing his career accomplishments was unmistakable and provided stark contrast to their casual dismissal of my contributions to the family's welfare. Isabella had driven up from Los Angeles on December 23rd, her arrival accompanied by updates about her freelance journalism success and the magazine assignments that were establishing her reputation in media circles. Her confidence and professional accomplishments drew similar admiration from my parents, who seemed to view her career trajectory as validation of their parenting decisions and family values. The dynamic between my parents and siblings during the pre-Christmas period reinforced patterns I had observed throughout the year, but with increased intensity due to the holiday setting. Miguel and Isabella were treated as honored guests whose comfort and entertainment took priority over practical considerations, while I remained responsible for managing the logistics that enabled their relaxation and enjoyment. Christmas morning had proceeded according to family tradition, with gift exchanges that highlighted the disparity in our respective financial situations. Miguel's presents to the family were thoughtful but modest, reflecting his current income limitations as an emerging recording artist. Isabella's gifts demonstrated similar consideration constrained by freelance income uncertainty. My presents, to family members, by contrast, represented significant financial investment despite my reduced savings and ongoing loan obligations to both siblings. The most telling moment of our gift exchange occurred when my mother opened my present to her, a pearl necklace I had selected carefully and saved for over 3 months to purchase. Her reaction was polite appreciation rather than the genuine gratitude that such a gift warranted, particularly given my current financial circumstances. "Thank you, Elena," she said while examining the necklace briefly before setting it aside to attend to other presents. "This is very nice. You always choose practical gifts." Her characterization of a $200 pearl necklace as practical revealed how completely she had lost perspective on my financial sacrifices for the family. The dismissive nature of her response suggested that expensive gifts from me had become expected rather than appreciated, while modest presents from my siblings received enthusiastic praise for their thoughtfulness and creativity. The morning gift exchange concluded with my receipt of presents that reflected my family's perception of my interests and lifestyle. Miguel had given me a book about personal finance management, apparently believing that I needed guidance in money management. Despite my consistent ability to support family expenses, Isabella had chosen a self-help book about career development for women, suggesting that she viewed my professional situation as requiring improvement through better personal strategy. My parents' gift was the most revealing of their attitudes toward my life choices. They had purchased a cookbook focused on budget-friendly meals for small households, apparently assuming that my primary interests revolved around domestic efficiency and cost management. The gift seemed designed more to reinforce their perception of my role within the family than to provide something I might genuinely enjoy or value. The contrast between my family's gift choices for me and their selections for each other was striking. Miguel and Isabella had received presents that acknowledged their professional achievements and personal interests, while my gifts seemed to focus on my utility as a family resource manager. This difference highlighted how fundamentally my family misunderstood my identity and aspirations. The afternoon preparation for dinner service required coordinated effort to transform our living space into an elegant dining environment suitable for 23 guests. My mother had assigned specific responsibilities to each family member, though the distribution of tasks reflected familiar patterns of expectation and assumption about our respective capabilities and availability. Miguel was asked to arrange the music playlist and ensure that the sound system provided appropriate background ambiance for our celebration. Isabella was responsible for creating an attractive beverage station and managing drink service throughout the evening. My assignments included table setup, food coordination with the catering service, guest accommodation management, and general logistics oversight for the entire event. The inequality in our task assignments was obvious but went unacknowledged by my family members. Miguel and Isabella's responsibilities were creative and social, allowing them to interact with guests and contribute to the celebratory atmosphere. My duties were operational and behind the scenes, ensuring that practical needs were met while others enjoyed the festivities. This pattern continued as guests began arriving around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Extended family members greeted Miguel and Isabella with enthusiasm about their career achievements, requesting updates about recording projects and journalism assignments while expressing pride in their accomplishments. My interactions with guests focused primarily on logistical matters such as coat storage, seating arrangements, and refreshment coordination. My Aunt Rosa's conversation with me exemplified the different expectations placed on family members during social gatherings. Rather than asking about my work or personal interests, she immediately inquired about my availability to help with her upcoming move to a smaller apartment. "Elena, you are so good at organizing things," she said while I arranged appetizers on serving platters. "Would you be able to help me sort through 40 years of belongings next month? I know you have experience managing household transitions, and I trust your judgment about what should be kept or donated." Her request assumed that my time was available for family service projects without consideration of my work schedule or personal commitments. The casual nature of her inquiry suggested that helping with such projects was part of my expected role within the extended family structure, rather than a favor that required negotiation and appreciation. Similar interactions occurred throughout the afternoon as family, friends, and neighbors sought my assistance with various practical matters, while engaging Miguel and Isabella in conversations about their professional achievements and future aspirations. The pattern reinforced my position as the family member responsible for service and support, rather than someone with interesting accomplishments worthy of discussion and celebration. Dr. Patricia Henderson had been invited to our Christmas dinner, as a family friend who had known us for several years through my employment at her medical practice. Her presence provided me with some comfort, because she represented the professional world where my competence and contributions were recognized and valued. However, her interactions with my family during the gathering would prove illuminating, in ways I had not anticipated. Dr. Henderson's conversation with my mother about my work performance and professional capabilities created an opportunity for recognition that my mother seemed unable or unwilling to embrace. When Dr. Henderson praised my organizational skills, medical knowledge, and patient relations abilities, My mother responded with comments that minimized my professional achievements, while emphasizing my domestic contributions to family welfare. Elena has always been practical and helpful, my mother replied to Dr. Henderson's compliments about my work capabilities. She understands that family responsibilities come first, which is why she has been able to support Miguel and Isabella in pursuing their dreams. Some people are meant to be the foundation that allows others to soar. Her response revealed how fundamentally she misunderstood both my professional potential and my personal aspirations. Dr. Henderson's surprised expression suggested that she had expected my mother to express pride in my work achievements rather than characterizing them as secondary to my family support role. The conversation continued with Dr. Henderson mentioning the nursing school opportunities she had discussed with me and her belief that I possessed the intelligence and dedication to excel in advanced healthcare roles. My mother's response to this information would prove to be the precursor to the evening's climactic confrontation. Nursing school would be difficult for Elena right now, my mother said dismissively. She has so many family obligations that require her attention and financial support. Maybe someday when Miguel and Isabella are more established, she can think about additional education. For now, she needs to focus on practical responsibilities. Dr. Henderson's expression during this exchange revealed her growing understanding of my family dynamics and the constraints that limited my professional development. Her polite but clearly surprised response indicated that she had not previously understood the extent to which family expectations restricted my career advancement opportunities. The dinner service began at 6 o'clock with my mother's traditional blessing that highlighted her gratitude for family unity and the achievements that made our celebration possible. Her words during this blessing would later seem prophetic, as she emphasized the importance of recognizing individual contributions to collective family success, while expressing pride in children who had fulfilled their potential through dedication and hard work. The seating arrangement for dinner reflected family hierarchy and social dynamics with precision that my mother had orchestrated carefully. Miguel and Isabella were positioned at the head table with my parents and honored guests, while I was seated with younger cousins and family friends in a location that facilitated my movement between the kitchen and dining area for service coordination. The dinner conversation flowed through topics that showcased my siblings' accomplishments while reinforcing their status as family success stories. Miguel described his recording process in detail, sharing anecdotes about studio sessions and collaborations with established musicians that entertained guests and demonstrated his professional progress. Isabella discussed her freelance journalism projects, including interviews with prominent political figures and cultural commentators that highlighted her access to influential networks and career advancement. Throughout these conversations, my role remained focused on ensuring that practical needs were met rather than participating as an equal contributor to family discussions. When guests required additional food or beverages, when serving dishes needed replenishing, when children required assistance with their meals, the responsibility fell to me automatically without explicit request or acknowledgement from other family members. The inequality of this arrangement became increasingly apparent as the evening progressed, and my siblings continued to receive attention and admiration, while my contributions to enabling the celebration went unnoticed by most guests. Several times during dinner, I observed family members engaging in animated conversations about career opportunities and personal achievements, while I managed logistics in the background, like hired help, rather than a family member participating in our holiday gathering. The turning point of the evening occurred during dessert service, when my mother decided to address the assembled guests with remarks about her children's accomplishments and her pride in their success. Her speech began with genuine warmth and maternal satisfaction as she described Miguel's musical achievements and Isabella's journalism career, highlighting specific accomplishments that demonstrated their talent and dedication. However, her remarks took an unexpected and devastating turn when she began discussing family dynamics and the different paths her children had chosen in life. What started as celebration of achievement became comparison and criticism that would shatter the facade of family harmony we had maintained throughout the gathering. I am so proud of Miguel and Isabella for pursuing their dreams and building successful careers despite challenges and setbacks, she began, her voice carrying the authority of maternal assessment. They have shown courage in following their passions and determination in overcoming obstacles that might have discouraged less ambitious people. Her words created anticipation among guests who expected similar praise for my contributions to family welfare and personal achievements. However, her next comments revealed the contempt that had been building beneath her expressions of appreciation for my sacrifices. Elena has chosen a different path, she continued, her tone shifting to disappointment that was audible to everyone present. While her brother and sister have pursued excellence and achievement, she has remained content with mediocrity and dependence. At 28 years old, she still lives at home, works in a dead-end job, and has never shown the ambition or drive that characterizes successful people. The silence that followed her remarks was deafening as guests processed the unexpected cruelty of her assessment. Several family members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, clearly surprised by the harshness of her criticism and the public nature of her disappointment in my life choices. Elena represents my biggest disappointment as a mother, she concluded, her voice carrying finality that suggested this assessment reflected careful consideration rather than momentary frustration. I raised 3 children with the same opportunities and support, but only 2 of them had the character and determination to make something meaningful of their lives. The devastation of her words was complete and irreversible. In front of 23 people who had known me throughout my life, my mother had characterized my decade of sacrifice as evidence of personal failure and moral deficiency. Her public humiliation was designed to establish definitively my position within family hierarchy, while showcasing her other children's superior character and achievement. The moment had arrived for my response. I reached into my purse with steady hands, withdrew the envelope I had prepared, and placed it calmly in front of my mother without speaking. The room remained silent as she stared at the unmarked envelope, clearly uncertain about its contents but sensing that my response would be significant. "Please open it," I said quietly, my voice carrying a confidence that surprised me given the emotional devastation I had just experienced. The contents will help clarify some misconceptions about my character and contributions to this family's success. My mother opened the envelope with trembling hands, while guests watched in fascination and apprehension. The documents inside would challenge every assumption she had made about my motivations, capabilities, and value to our family while establishing new boundaries that would protect my dignity and financial security going forward. The contents of that envelope represented months of careful preparation and documentation that would demonstrate the true extent of my contributions to family welfare while establishing terms for any future relationship based on mutual respect rather than exploitation disguised as family obligation. The silence that filled our dining room as my mother extracted the documents from the envelope was profound and electric. 23 people watched in fascination as she unfolded the first page, her face transitioning from confusion to shock, to something approaching horror as she processed the information contained within. The documents I had prepared represented 3 months of meticulous research, financial analysis, and legal consultation that would fundamentally alter every assumption our family had made about my contributions and their obligations. The first document my mother encountered was a comprehensive financial analysis titled Elena Martinez Family Contribution Summary, October 2014 through December 2024. This 10-page report detailed every monetary contribution I had made to family welfare during the decade following my decision to defer veterinary school. The numbers were staggering, even to me, though I had compiled them methodically over several weeks using bank statements, receipts, and careful reconstruction of cash transactions that had not been formally documented. My mother's hands shook as she read the executive summary on the first page. The total amount of my financial contributions over 10 years exceeded $147,000, not including the opportunity cost of lost educational advancement and career development that would have resulted from pursuing veterinary medicine as originally planned. This figure represented more than twice my current annual salary and constituted what most financial advisors would consider a substantial inheritance or trust fund distribution. The breakdown of contributions was organized by category to demonstrate the scope and consistency of my financial support. Housing expenses totaled $38,000, representing my payments for property taxes, utility bills, home maintenance, and major repairs that my parents could not afford during periods of reduced income. These payments had enabled my parents to maintain their home ownership and standard of living despite my father's health challenges and my mother's employment instability. Educational expenses for my siblings totaled $49,000, including Miguel's private academy tuition, specialized music lessons, equipment purchases, and the recent $15,000 loan for his recording project. Isabella's journalism education had required $22,000 in supplementary funding beyond her scholarships, including living expenses during unpaid internships, professional development courses, and the recent $3,000 for rent, assistance during her employment transition. Medical expenses constituted another significant category, with my contributions totaling $19,000 over the decade. These payments had covered insurance deductibles, prescription medications, dental work, and specialized treatments that exceeded my family's healthcare budget. Isabella's asthma management alone had required $8,000 in supplementary medical expenses during her teenage years. Transportation costs represented $14,000 in contributions, including vehicle maintenance, insurance, payments, registration fees, and the down payment for Isabella's current car. Emergency expenses accounted for another $12,000, covering unexpected household repairs, legal fees, and financial shortfalls that threatened family stability during particularly challenging periods. The miscellaneous category, totaling $15,000, included holiday celebrations, family vacation contributions, gift purchases for extended family members, and countless smaller expenses that I had covered without formal documentation or expectation of repayment. The Christmas dinner we were currently enjoying represented $2,800 of my financial contribution, from catering and decorations to gifts and house preparation expenses. My mother's face grew increasingly pale as she processed these figures and their implications. The guests seated nearest to her began to understand the significance of the documents as whispered conversations spread throughout the dining room. Dr. Henderson's expression reflected her growing comprehension of the constraints that had limited my professional development and the sacrifices that had enabled my family's stability and my siblings' achievements. The second document in the envelope was equally revealing, but focused on non-financial contributions that were more difficult to quantify, but no less significant. This analysis, titled Time Investment and Opportunity Cost Assessment, documented the hours I had devoted to family service over the past decade and calculated the professional advancement opportunities I had foregone to maintain my availability for family support. The time analysis revealed that I had invested approximately 8,000 hours in family service activities beyond my direct financial contributions. These hours included household management, appointment coordination, paperwork processing, emergency response, and general problem-solving that had enabled other family members to focus on their career development and personal interests without concern for practical responsibilities. The opportunity cost calculation was perhaps the most sobering element of the entire analysis. Based on typical career progression for someone with my academic capabilities and work ethic, the decision to defer veterinary school and maintain steady but limited employment had cost approximately $300,000 in lifetime earning potential. This figure assumed conservative estimates of veterinary practice income and did not account for the additional satisfaction and professional fulfillment that career advancement might have provided. The third document represented the most strategic element of my prepared response to years of exploitation disguised as family obligation. This legal document, prepared with assistance from an attorney specializing in family financial disputes, was titled Promissory Note Consolidation and Repayment Agreement. The document outlined terms for the repayment of all outstanding loans to family members and established formal expectations for any future financial assistance. The consolidation agreement specified that Miguel's $15,000 recording loan and Isabella's $3,000 rent assistance constituted formal debts with specific repayment schedules and interest terms. Miguel's loan required monthly payments of $500 beginning in March, with the full balance due within 3 years. Isabella's assistance required immediate repayment of $1,000 and monthly payments of $200 until the balance was satisfied. More significantly, the document established that any future requests for financial assistance would require formal loan agreements with standard interest rates, collateral requirements, and legal enforcement mechanisms. This provision was designed to eliminate the informal family lending arrangements that had enabled my siblings to avoid accountability for repayment while treating my financial support as grants rather than loans. The fourth document was perhaps the most powerful component of my strategic response because it demonstrated external validation for my professional capabilities and career potential. This document was a formal offer letter from Dr. Henderson's medical practice, dated 1 week prior to our Christmas dinner, offering me a promoted position as practice administrator with significant salary increase and comprehensive benefits package. Dr. Henderson had prepared this offer after recognizing my competence and dedication over 5 years of employment. The position represented substantial career advancement that would utilize my administrative skills, medical knowledge, and patient relations experience while providing opportunities for additional professional development and certification. The salary increase alone would improve my annual income by $15,000, with additional benefits including health insurance, retirement contributions, and educational assistance. However, the offer letter included a critical requirement that had influenced my decision to prepare the envelope and its contents. The practice administrator position required availability for occasional evening meetings, weekend events, and professional development activities that would conflict with my current family obligations. Accepting the promotion would necessitate establishing clear boundaries around my personal time and reducing my availability for family crisis management. Dr. Henderson had discussed this requirement with me during our private conversation about the position, expressing her concern that my family commitments might prevent me from succeeding in the expanded role. Her frank assessment had forced me to confront the reality that my current lifestyle was limiting not only my personal development, but also my professional opportunities and earning potential. The fifth document in the envelope represented the most definitive statement of my evolving position within family relationships. This document, titled Elena Martinez Personal Boundaries and Relationship Terms, established clear expectations for my future interactions with family members and specified the conditions under which I would continue to provide support and assistance. The boundary document specified that my financial contributions to family welfare would be limited to genuine emergencies that threatened basic safety and security. Routine expenses, discretionary spending, and lifestyle maintenance would become the responsibility of the individuals who benefited from those expenditures. My role as family financial safety net would be terminated, with appropriate notice period to allow adjustment to the new arrangements. The document also established expectations for recognition and appreciation of my contributions to family welfare. Public criticism of my life choices, career development, or personal relationships would result in immediate suspension of all family support activities. Family members would be required to acknowledge my contributions appropriately and refrain from characterizing my sacrifices as evidence of personal failure or limited ambition. Most importantly, the boundary document specified that my primary responsibility was to my own career development, financial security, and personal relationships. Family requests for assistance would be evaluated based on their impact on my professional goals and personal well-being rather than automatic accommodation regardless of personal cost. The comprehensive nature of these documents and their implications created a profound shift in the power dynamics that had governed our family relationships for a decade. The financial analysis demonstrated that my contributions had been substantial and measurable rather than minor conveniences that could be dismissed or taken for granted. The time investment calculation revealed the professional sacrifices I had made to maintain my availability for family service. The legal documentation established formal expectations for accountability and reciprocity in our relationships. My mother finished reading the documents in complete silence while guests throughout the dining room waited for her response to information that had fundamentally altered their understanding of our family dynamics. The woman who had characterized me as her biggest disappointment moments earlier was confronting evidence that her successful children had achieved their accomplishments through my substantial financial and practical support. Miguel and Isabella, seated at the head table with clear view of our interaction, appeared increasingly uncomfortable as they recognized the implications of the documents for their own relationship with me and their obligations regarding loan repayment. Their expressions revealed growing awareness that their casual attitude toward my financial assistance had been documented and formalized in ways that would require genuine accountability. Dr. Henderson's reaction to observing this revelation was particularly meaningful because she represented the professional world where my competence and potential were recognized and valued. Her presence during this family confrontation provided external validation for my decision to establish boundaries and demand appropriate treatment from people who had exploited my generosity for years. Extended family members and friends who had witnessed my mother's cruel assessment of my character were now processing information that revealed her comments to be not only inaccurate, but profoundly unfair, given the extent of my contributions to family welfare. Several guests appeared visibly uncomfortable with their earlier passive acceptance of her criticism, recognizing that they had witnessed the public humiliation of someone who had been exceptionally generous and selfless. The silence continued for several more minutes as my mother processed the full implications of the documents and their impact on future family relationships. The evidence presented in the envelope challenged every assumption she had made about my motivations, capabilities, and value, while establishing new terms for interaction that would require genuine respect and appreciation. When she finally looked up from the documents, her expression reflected a complex mixture of shock, embarrassment, and something that might have been recognition of the injustice she had perpetrated through years of exploitation and public humiliation. However, her initial response would reveal whether this confrontation would lead to genuine acknowledgement of her treatment of me or defensive justification of her previous behavior. The reaction of other family members would prove equally significant in determining whether the relationships could be repaired based on mutual respect or whether permanent separation would be necessary to protect my dignity and well-being. The documents in the envelope had created an opportunity for honest evaluation of our family dynamics, but the responses they generated would determine the ultimate outcome of this confrontation. The transformation I was experiencing in that moment was profound and irreversible. For the first time in my adult life, I had presented evidence of my worth and contributions while demanding appropriate recognition and treatment. The fear and anxiety that had characterized my anticipation of this confrontation were being replaced by a sense of empowerment and self-advocacy that felt both foreign and deeply satisfying. Regardless of how my family responded to the revelation contained in the envelope, I had taken the crucial step of valuing myself appropriately and refusing to accept exploitation disguised as family obligation. The documents represented not only an accounting of past contributions, but a declaration of future boundaries that would protect my interests and demand mutual respect in all family relationships. The silence that filled our dining room was the silence of assumptions being shattered and power dynamics being fundamentally altered. What happened next would determine whether our family could rebuild relationships based on honesty and mutual respect, or whether this Christmas dinner would mark the end of my accommodation to their expectations and the beginning of my commitment to my own dignity and potential. The profound silence that had enveloped our dining room following my mother's review of the envelope contents lasted nearly 3 minutes, though it felt considerably longer to everyone present. During those moments, I observed the faces of 23 people processing information that fundamentally altered their understanding of our family dynamics and my role within them. The transformation occurring in real time was visible as expressions shifted from confusion to comprehension to varying degrees of discomfort, embarrassment, and in some cases, admiration for my strategic response to years of exploitation. My mother was the first to break the silence, though her initial words revealed the defensive mechanisms that had enabled her to rationalize her treatment of me for so many years. Rather than acknowledging the substantial evidence of my contributions or expressing regret for her public humiliation of my character, she attempted to minimize the significance of the documentation while maintaining her position as the wronged party in our family dynamic. "Elena, this is inappropriate," she began, her voice carrying indignation that seemed entirely misplaced given the circumstances. "You have chosen to embarrass our family in front of our guests by creating documents that make private family matters appear transactional and cold. Families support each other without keeping score or demanding recognition for every contribution." Her response demonstrated a complete failure to grasp the irony of her position. She had just publicly declared me her biggest disappointment and characterized my life choices as evidence of moral and personal failure. Yet she now claimed that my documented response constituted inappropriate family embarrassment. The selective application of her standards for family privacy and dignity revealed the depth of her inability to recognize the injustice of her previous behavior. More significantly, her characterization of my financial contributions as normal family support ignored the substantial magnitude and one-sided nature of the assistance I had provided. The $147,000 documented in my analysis represented far more than typical family mutual aid. Her dismissal of this evidence suggested either genuine inability to comprehend the extent of my sacrifices or deliberate minimization designed to avoid accountability for her exploitation of my generosity. Miguel's reaction to the envelope revelation proved equally telling, though his response took a different form than our mother's defensive deflection. His primary concern appeared to focus on the formal loan documentation and its implications for his financial obligations rather than recognition of the unfair treatment I had endured or appreciation for the support that had enabled his career development. "Elena, we never agreed to formal loan terms with interest rates and legal enforcement," he said, his voice carrying anxiety about the financial implications rather than acknowledgement of his moral obligations. "I always planned to pay you back when my career became more stable, but these documents make it seem like a business transaction instead of family assistance." His response revealed the fundamental disconnect between his perception of our financial relationship and the reality of my sacrifice on his behalf. In his framework, my $15,000 contribution to his recording project constituted family assistance that would be repaid according to his convenience and financial capacity. The possibility that my own financial security and career development had been compromised by his loan had not factored into his calculations or timeline for repayment. His concern about the formal terms of the loan documentation also demonstrated his assumption that family financial assistance should remain informal and non-binding, protecting him from accountability while ensuring his access to my resources when needed. The transformation of our financial relationship into documented agreements with standard business terms threatened his comfortable position as beneficiary of my support without corresponding responsibility for timely repayment. Isabella's reaction proved the most emotionally volatile of my immediate family members, though her response revealed different concerns than those expressed by Miguel and our mother. Her primary focus appeared to center on her perception that my documentation had exposed her financial dependence and career instability to extended family members whose opinions she valued highly. "This is humiliating, Elena," she said, her voice carrying anger that seemed directed at me rather than at her own behavior or our mother's cruel assessment. You have made it look like Miguel and I are freeloaders who take advantage of your generosity, when the reality is that we would have managed our situations differently if we had known you were keeping such detailed records of every dollar. Her response demonstrated a complete failure to understand that the issue was not my documentation of contributions, but rather the pattern of exploitation that had necessitated such documentation. She seemed unable to recognize that her casual attitude toward repayment and lack of appreciation for my assistance had created the need for formal accountability measures. Instead, she positioned herself as the victim of my strategic response to her taking advantage of my financial support. Moreover, her claim that she would have managed differently if she had known about my record-keeping revealed her assumption that family financial assistance should be provided without expectation of accountability or appreciation. She appeared to believe that my failure to demand formal terms at the time of her requests had constituted agreement to treat the assistance as grants rather than loans requiring repayment. The reactions of extended family members and guests provided a stark contrast to my immediate family's defensive responses. Several relatives who had witnessed the entire confrontation approached me privately during the confusion following the envelope revelation to express their shock at my mother's treatment and their admiration for my measured response to such public humiliation. My Aunt Rosa, who had earlier requested my assistance with her upcoming move, was among the first to acknowledge the injustice of the situation and express appreciation for my years of family service. Her response provided validation that external observers recognized both the extent of my contributions and the inappropriate nature of my mother's public criticism. "Elena, I had no idea how much you have sacrificed for this family," she said quietly, drawing me aside while other family members continued processing the revelation. "Your mother's comments tonight were completely unfair, especially given everything you have done to support Miguel and Isabella's success. I am embarrassed that I asked for your help with my move without understanding how much you already do for everyone else." Her acknowledgement of my contributions and recognition of the burden that additional requests would place on my time and energy demonstrated the type of awareness and consideration that had been entirely absent from my immediate family's treatment of me. Her response also highlighted how external family members had been unaware of the extent of my sacrifices because my immediate family had failed to acknowledge or discuss my contributions in ways that would have educated others about the scope of my support. Dr. Henderson's reaction to witnessing the entire confrontation proved particularly meaningful because she represented professional validation of my capabilities and potential for advancement. Her expression throughout the evening had evolved from surprise at my family's treatment to what appeared to be genuine anger at the injustice she had observed. "Elena, I need to speak with you privately," she said, approaching me during a brief lull in the family discussions surrounding the envelope revelation. "After witnessing tonight's events, I believe it is even more important that you consider the practice administrator position we discussed. Your family's inability to appreciate your contributions should not prevent you from pursuing the career advancement you clearly deserve." Her professional perspective on my situation provided crucial external validation that my response to years of exploitation had been appropriate and necessary. As someone who had observed my work capabilities and professional potential, her assessment carried weight that helped counteract my family's attempts to characterize my boundary setting as inappropriate or selfish behavior. The broader group of family friends and neighbors who had attended our Christmas dinner demonstrated varying levels of discomfort with the confrontation they had witnessed, though most appeared to recognize that my mother's public humiliation of my character had been inappropriate regardless of any private family disagreements that might have existed. Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor who had been a family friend for over 15 years, approached me with obvious concern about the family conflict and genuine sympathy for the position I had been placed in during what should have been a celebratory holiday gathering. "Elena, dear, I have watched you grow up and become such a responsible and caring young woman," she said with the directness that characterized her generation's approach to addressing uncomfortable truths. "What your mother said tonight was wrong, and everyone here knows it. You have always been respectful and helpful to everyone in this family and this neighborhood. Her validation provided additional confirmation that external observers recognized the injustice of my treatment and the appropriateness of my response to such public criticism. The support from family friends who had known me throughout my adult life helped reinforce my confidence in the boundaries I had established and the documentation I had prepared to protect my interests. The immediate aftermath of the envelope revelation also included several private conversations with younger family members who had observed the confrontation and appeared to recognize important lessons about family dynamics, personal boundaries, and the importance of standing up for oneself in the face of exploitation or unfair treatment. My cousin Maria, who was 24 years old and recently graduated from college, approached me with questions about my decision-making process and the strategies I had used to document my contributions and establish formal boundaries with family members who had taken advantage of my generosity. "Elena, I really admire how you handled that situation," she said during a quiet moment when we found ourselves alone in the kitchen while I managed the practical aspects of concluding the dinner service. "I have been struggling with similar issues in my own family, where I feel like my contributions are taken for granted and my goals are considered less important than other people's needs. How did you find the courage to finally stand up for yourself?" Her question provided an opportunity to articulate the principles and strategies that had guided my response to years of exploitation, while also recognizing that my experience might provide valuable insights for other young adults navigating complex family dynamics and expectations. The courage came from recognizing that my family's treatment of me was not actually helping them become better people, I explained, while arranging leftover food and managing the kitchen cleanup that had fallen to me despite the evening's confrontation. When people can take advantage of someone's generosity without consequences or appreciation, it enables them to become selfish and entitled rather than encouraging them to develop their own capabilities and responsibilities. This perspective had crystallized during my months of preparation for the Christmas confrontation, as I recognized that my continued accommodation of unreasonable family expectations was actually preventing my siblings and parents from developing the independence and accountability that would serve them better in the long term. The conversation with Maria also provided an opportunity to discuss the importance of documentation and formal agreements in family financial relationships, particularly when patterns of exploitation had been established over extended periods of time. The documentation was crucial because it transformed subjective family complaints into objective evidence that could not be dismissed or minimized, I continued, while she helped with the practical tasks of food storage and dish management. When family members can characterize your contributions as minor or claim that you are exaggerating the extent of your sacrifices, having specific numbers and dates makes it impossible for them to avoid confronting the reality of the situation. The practical aspects of managing the conclusion of our Christmas dinner while processing the emotional and relational implications of the evening's confrontation created an interesting parallel to the broader patterns that had characterized my family role for so many years. Even after establishing clear boundaries and demanding appropriate recognition for my contributions, I continued to handle the logistical requirements that enabled our family gathering to conclude successfully. However, the difference in my approach to these responsibilities was significant and reflected the internal transformation that had been occurring throughout my preparation for this confrontation. Rather than performing these tasks with the resentment and feeling of exploitation that had characterized my previous family service, I approached them as choices that reflected my values and capabilities rather than obligations imposed by others. Expectations. The shift in my internal experience of family responsibilities demonstrated that establishing boundaries and demanding appropriate recognition had not eliminated my willingness to contribute to family welfare, but rather had transformed my contributions from imposed obligations into conscious choices made from a position of strength and self-respect. As the evening concluded and guests began departing, the immediate family members who remained were forced to address the practical implications of the boundary document and loan consolidation agreements that had been presented in the envelope. The formal nature of these documents meant that ignoring them or hoping they would be forgotten was not a viable strategy for avoiding accountability. Miguel's concern about the repayment schedule for his recording project loan led to a private conversation where he attempted to negotiate modified terms that would be less demanding on his current income while maintaining his access to family financial support for future needs. Elena, I understand that you want formal recognition of the loan, but $500 per month is going to be difficult with my current touring schedule and income uncertainty, he explained, approaching me while I finished organizing the practical aspects of concluding our gathering. Could we modify the terms to be more flexible based on my monthly earnings rather than fixed payments? His request revealed his continued assumption that my financial assistance should accommodate his convenience and circumstances, rather than reflecting standard business practices for loan agreements. The possibility that my own financial planning and security required predictable repayment schedules had not factored into his proposed modifications. Miguel, the repayment terms in the consolidation agreement reflect standard practices for personal loans of this magnitude, I responded, maintaining the professional tone that had characterized my approach to family financial matters since presenting the envelope contents. If you are unable to meet these obligations, we can discuss alternative arrangements, but they will need to include appropriate collateral or cosigner agreements to protect my financial interests. This conversation marked a fundamental shift in our sibling relationship, from informal family assistance to formal business arrangements that required mutual respect and accountability. The change was necessary to protect my financial security, while establishing expectations that would prevent future exploitation of my generosity. The overall impact of the Christmas dinner confrontation extended far beyond the immediate family relationships to influence my understanding of my own worth, capabilities, and rights in all interpersonal interactions. The experience of presenting evidence of my contributions while demanding appropriate recognition had been profoundly empowering and had established a foundation for self-advocacy that would influence all future relationships and professional opportunities. The transformation I was experiencing represented not just a response to family exploitation, but a fundamental shift toward recognizing and protecting my own value while maintaining my capacity for generosity and service from a position of strength, rather than vulnerability. This balance would prove crucial for building sustainable relationships based on mutual respect, rather than one-sided sacrifice disguised as family obligation. The week following Christmas dinner marked a period of profound transformation that extended far beyond the immediate family conflict to encompass fundamental changes in my professional trajectory, personal boundaries, and sense of self-worth. The confrontation that had occurred during our holiday gathering served as a catalyst for decisions and actions that would reshape every aspect of my life, beginning with my acceptance of Dr. Henderson's promotion offer and extending through systematic changes in how I approached all relationships and obligations. December 27th arrived with the clarity that often follows decisive action. I awakened that morning with a sense of purpose and direction that had been absent from my life for many years. The emotional exhaustion that had characterized the immediate aftermath of Christmas dinner had been replaced by energetic determination to implement the boundaries I had established and pursue the opportunities I had deferred for too long. The envelope presentation had not only challenged my family's assumptions about my role, but had also liberated me from the psychological constraints that had limited my own vision of what was possible. My first priority was to contact Dr. Henderson regarding the practice administrator position she had offered. The promotion represented not only significant career advancement and financial improvement, but also validation of my professional capabilities by someone who had observed my work, performance objectively, and recognized my potential for growth and leadership. The position would require me to establish clear boundaries around my availability for family obligations, making it an ideal vehicle for implementing the relationship changes I had documented in my boundary agreement. The conversation with Dr. B. Henderson took place in her private office during the lunch hour on December 27th, providing privacy for discussion of both the professional opportunity and the family dynamics she had witnessed during Christmas dinner. Her perspective on the events she had observed proved invaluable for reinforcing my confidence in the decisions I was making and the boundaries I was establishing. Elena, I have been thinking about our Christmas dinner conversation since Saturday evening, Dr. Henderson began, her professional demeanor reflecting both concern for my welfare and recognition of the injustice she had witnessed. Your family's treatment of you was completely inappropriate, particularly given what I observed about your contributions to enabling their gathering and supporting their achievements. Your mother's public criticism of your life choices was not only unfair but factually inaccurate based on my professional knowledge of your capabilities and potential. Her validation of my assessment of the family dynamics provided crucial external confirmation that my response had been appropriate and necessary. As someone with extensive experience in healthcare administration and personnel management, Dr. Henderson's professional judgment carried significant weight in my evaluation of whether my boundary setting constituted reasonable self-advocacy or inappropriate family conflict. The practice administrator position we discussed becomes even more important in light of what I observed Saturday evening, she continued, reviewing the formal offer documents we had prepared prior to Christmas. This promotion will provide you with the professional recognition and financial independence that your family has failed to acknowledge or support. Your organizational skills, medical knowledge, and patient relations expertise make you ideally suited for expanded responsibilities that will advance your career trajectory significantly. The specific terms of the promotion were substantial and represented the type of career advancement that had seemed impossible while maintaining my extensive family obligations. The salary increase of $15,000 annually would improve my financial security while reducing my dependence on overtime work to meet family contribution expectations. The comprehensive benefits package included health insurance, retirement contributions, and educational assistance that would enable me to pursue professional development opportunities I had deferred for years. Most importantly, the position included authority and decision-making responsibilities that would enhance my professional credibility and provide foundation for future advancement within healthcare administration. The role would involve managing office operations, supervising support staff, coordinating with insurance providers, and implementing efficiency improvements that would utilize my analytical and organizational capabilities fully. I am prepared to accept the position with enthusiasm and appreciation for your confidence in my abilities, I responded, recognizing that this decision represented a crucial step toward the independence and professional fulfillment I had deferred for family obligations. The timing is particularly appropriate given the boundary changes I am implementing in my personal relationships to ensure that my professional responsibilities receive the priority they deserve. Dr. Henderson's understanding of my family situation enabled her to provide practical guidance for managing the transition to expanded professional responsibilities while maintaining appropriate boundaries around family demands on my time and energy. Elena, one of the most important aspects of this promotion will be establishing clear expectations about your availability for non-work obligations, she explained, her experience with healthcare management providing valuable perspective on work-life balance issues. The practice administrator role requires consistent availability during business hours and occasional evening or weekend responsibilities for urgent situations. Family obligations that interfere with these professional requirements could jeopardize your success in the position. Her guidance reinforced my recognition that accepting the promotion would necessitate fundamental changes in how I managed family requests for assistance and crisis intervention. The informal availability that had characterized my previous role as family problem solver would need to be replaced with structured boundaries that protected my professional obligations and career advancement opportunities. The implementation of these professional boundaries began immediately as I prepared to assume my new responsibilities. January 2nd was established as my start date for the practice administrator position, providing 1 week for transition, planning, and preparation for the expanded role. This timeline also created natural separation between the Christmas confrontation and my professional advancement. allowing family members to process the boundary changes while I focused on career development. However, my family's reaction to my career advancement proved to be more resistant and manipulative than I had anticipated. Rather than expressing pride in my promotion or recognition of the professional validation it represented, my immediate family members seemed primarily concerned about how my expanded responsibilities would affect my availability for their needs and expectations. My mother's response to learning about my promotion was particularly revealing of her priorities and assumptions about my role within the family structure. Rather than celebrating my professional achievement or acknowledging that Dr. Henderson's confidence in my abilities contradicted her Christmas dinner assessment of my character and potential, she focused immediately on the implications for family logistics and support. "Elena, this promotion sounds demanding and stressful," she said during our first conversation following my acceptance of the position. "Are you sure you want to take on additional responsibilities when you already have so many family obligations that require your attention? Dr. Henderson might not understand how important your contributions are to maintaining our household stability." Her response demonstrated complete failure to recognize that my family obligations had been limiting my professional development, rather than representing legitimate priorities that should constrain my career advancement. The possibility that my professional success might require reducing my availability for family service seemed to constitute a threat to her expectations rather than a positive development worthy of celebration and support. Miguel's reaction to my promotion proved equally problematic, though his concerns focused primarily on the implications for his loan repayment obligations and his access to family financial assistance during his career development phase. Formal loan documentation I had presented during Christmas dinner had created accountability that conflicted with his preferred arrangement of informal family support without binding repayment requirements. "Elena, I hope this new job will not make you less understanding about family financial situations," he said during a phone conversation intended to negotiate modifications to his repayment schedule. "My touring income is still unpredictable, and I may need flexibility in meeting the monthly payment requirements you outlined in that agreement." His assumption that my professional advancement should increase my capacity for family financial support while maintaining flexible expectations for his obligations revealed his fundamental misunderstanding of the boundary changes I was implementing. The promotion represented an opportunity for me to build personal financial security rather than expanded capability for subsidizing family expenses and lifestyle choices. Isabella's response combined elements of both my mother's concern about my availability and Miguel's anxiety about financial accountability, while adding her own perspective about the impact of my boundary setting on her access to family support during her career transition period. "Elena, I am concerned that this promotion is making you too focused on money and professional advancement instead of family relationships," she said during our first conversation after Christmas dinner. "The documents you presented at dinner made our family support seem like business transactions instead of expressions of love and mutual assistance." Her characterization of my formal loan agreements as excessive focus on money demonstrated remarkable inability to recognize that my financial contributions had constituted substantial business transactions regardless of whether they were documented formally. The transformation of informal exploitation into formal accountability was designed to protect my interests rather than diminish family affection or support. The resistance I encountered from immediate family members contrasted sharply with the positive responses I received from extended family, friends, and professional colleagues who learned about my promotion and the boundary changes I was implementing. These external perspectives provided valuable validation that my decisions were appropriate and beneficial, rather than selfish or damaging to legitimate family relationships. Jennifer Chen's reaction to learning about my promotion and the Christmas dinner confrontation was particularly supportive and reinforced my confidence in the direction I was pursuing. As my closest friend and someone who had observed my family dynamics for many years, her perspective carried significant weight in my evaluation of whether my changes were reasonable and necessary. "Elena, I am so proud of you for finally standing up for yourself and pursuing the career advancement you deserve, she said during our first meeting after the holidays. Your family's reaction to your promotion tells you everything you need to know about their priorities and their respect for your potential. People who genuinely care about your welfare would be celebrating your success rather than worrying about how it might affect their access to your support. Her assessment provided external confirmation that my family's resistance to my professional advancement was inappropriate and revealed their exploitative priorities rather than legitimate concerns about family relationships or mutual support. The practical implementation of my new professional responsibilities required systematic changes in how I managed my time, energy, and availability for family requests and crisis situations. The practice administrator role demanded consistent focus during business hours and occasional availability for urgent situations that could not be deferred to accommodate family obligations. These requirements necessitated establishing clear communication protocols with family members about when and how they could contact me regarding non-emergency situations. Routine requests for assistance, financial support, or crisis intervention would need to be scheduled around my professional responsibilities, rather than assuming immediate availability regardless of work obligations. The transition to these new protocols proved challenging for family members who had become accustomed to treating my time and availability as unlimited resources for their convenience. Miguel's first attempt to contact me during work hours regarding his loan repayment concerns provided an opportunity to demonstrate the boundary enforcement that would characterize our future interactions. Miguel, I am currently managing patient care responsibilities and cannot discuss personal financial matters during work hours, I explained during his call to my office line. We can schedule a conversation this evening after 6 o'clock to address your concerns about the loan agreement, but family matters will need to be handled outside of my professional schedule going forward. This interaction established the precedent that my professional responsibilities would take priority over family convenience, and that accommodation of their needs would require respect for my work obligations and advanced scheduling, rather than assumption of immediate availability. Isabella's reaction to these new communication protocols revealed her difficulty adjusting to the reality that my time and attention would no longer be automatically available for her needs and concerns. Her first request for assistance following Christmas dinner involved coordination of freelance assignment deadlines with her need for family emotional support during a particularly stressful work period. Elena, I really need to talk through some career decisions with you this afternoon, she said during a call to my office during peak patient hours. The magazine assignment deadline is creating stress that I need help managing, and you always give such good advice about balancing competing priorities. While I appreciated her recognition of my problem-solving capabilities, her expectation that I would be available for immediate consultation without consideration of my work responsibilities demonstrated the continued adjustment required for family members to respect my professional boundaries. Isabella, I value our relationship and want to provide support for your career decisions, I responded while managing multiple patient scheduling issues that required immediate attention. However, I will need to schedule our conversation for this evening when I can give you the focused attention your concerns deserve without compromising my professional responsibilities. The systematic enforcement of these boundaries required consistent commitment to my professional priorities, even when family members expressed frustration or disappointment with my reduced availability. The emotional pressure to accommodate their expectations was significant, particularly given their attempts to characterize my boundary setting as evidence of changed priorities or diminished family commitment. However, the external validation I received from Dr. Henderson, colleagues, and friends reinforced my understanding that establishing appropriate work-life boundaries was necessary for professional success and personal well-being, rather than selfish disregard for family relationships. Dr. Henderson's mentorship during my transition to expanded responsibilities proved invaluable for developing the confidence and skills necessary to succeed in healthcare administration while maintaining appropriate boundaries around family obligations. Her guidance helped me recognize that professional advancement required protecting my time and energy for work-related priorities, rather than allowing family demands to compromise my performance or limit my potential. Elena, one of the most important lessons for healthcare administrators is learning to prioritize urgent needs over convenient requests, she explained during one of our early transition meetings. Patient care requirements must take precedence over personal preferences, and your professional development depends on demonstrating reliability and focus during work hours. This principle applied directly to my family boundary management, as their requests for immediate assistance rarely constituted genuine emergencies that warranted interrupting professional responsibilities. The distinction between urgent needs and convenient preferences would prove crucial for maintaining appropriate limits while preserving family relationships based on mutual respect rather than exploitation of my availability. The first month of my tenure as practice administrator exceeded all expectations, both in terms of professional fulfillment and confirmation that my decision to prioritize career advancement over family accommodation had been absolutely correct. January proved to be a period of remarkable growth and validation as I implemented operational improvements, managed expanded responsibilities, and demonstrated leadership capabilities that had been constrained by years of family obligations. The contrast between my professional environment, where my contributions were valued and my potential was recognized, and my family dynamic, where my advancement was resented and my boundaries were challenged, became increasingly stark and illuminating. Dr. Henderson's confidence in my abilities proved to be well-founded, as I quickly adapted to the administrative responsibilities that had seemed daunting during my initial consideration of the promotion. The organizational skills I had developed through years of managing family crises translated seamlessly into healthcare operations management, while my medical knowledge and patient relations experience provided foundation for understanding the clinical aspects of practice administration. Within 2 weeks, I had identified inefficiencies in appointment scheduling, insurance processing, and inventory management that had been costing the practice both time and revenue. The implementation of improved systems and procedures generated immediate positive results that validated my analytical approach and problem-solving capabilities. Patient wait times decreased by an average of 15 minutes due to optimized scheduling protocols I developed. Insurance claim processing became more efficient through updated documentation procedures that reduced rejection rates and accelerated payment cycles. Supply ordering was streamlined through vendor relationship management that achieved cost savings while ensuring consistent availability of necessary materials. These tangible improvements earned recognition from Dr. Henderson and the entire medical staff, creating a professional environment where my contributions were acknowledged, appreciated, and compensated appropriately. The contrast with my family situation, where years of substantial contributions had earned criticism and exploitation, reinforced my understanding that the boundary changes I had implemented were necessary for my personal and professional development. The financial benefits of my promotion became apparent immediately, as the $15,000 salary increase provided breathing room in my budget that had been impossible while supporting extensive family obligations. For the first time in over a decade, I was able to consider personal goals and purchases without calculating their impact on my capacity to respond to family financial emergencies. The psychological relief of financial security cannot be overstated. After years of living paycheck to paycheck due to family support obligations, however, the most significant transformation was internal and related to my growing confidence in my professional judgment and leadership capabilities. The practice administrator role required making decisions that affected patient care, staff, efficiency, and practice profitability, responsibilities that demanded analytical thinking and decisive action. The success of my initiatives demonstrated that my capabilities extended far beyond the family support role that had defined my identity for so many years. This professional validation became crucial as my family escalated their efforts to undermine my boundary setting and restore the previous dynamic of unlimited access to my time, energy, and financial resources. Their tactics evolved from direct criticism of my decisions to more sophisticated manipulation designed to create guilt and pressure that would force me to abandon the self-advocacy I had developed through the Christmas dinner confrontation. My mother's approach to this campaign proved to be the most psychologically challenging because it combined emotional manipulation with strategic attempts to isolate me from family relationships and community connections that had provided identity and belonging throughout my life, rather than acknowledging my professional success or expressing pride in my achievements. She characterized my advancement as evidence of selfishness and family abandonment that threatened our collective welfare. "Elena, your promotion is changing you in ways that concern me deeply," she said during one of our increasingly tense weekly phone conversations. "You used to prioritize family relationships and understand that our support for each other was more important than individual achievement. This new job is making you focused on money and career advancement instead of the values that hold families together." Her characterization of my professional success as moral failure revealed the depth of her investment in maintaining the exploitative family dynamic that had enabled her to depend on my support while criticizing my life choices. The possibility that my advancement represented positive personal development rather than character deterioration seemed impossible for her to acknowledge or accept. More troubling was her systematic effort to rewrite the history of our family relationships in ways that minimized my contributions, while exaggerating the support and encouragement she had provided for my goals and aspirations. This revisionist narrative was designed to make my boundary setting appear ungrateful and unjustified, rather than a reasonable response to years of exploitation and lack of appreciation. "I have always encouraged you to pursue your dreams and build your own life," she claimed during one particularly frustrating conversation. "The fact that you chose to prioritize family responsibilities over career advancement was your decision, not something we forced upon you. Now you are acting like we prevented you from achieving your goals when the reality is that you simply were not ambitious enough to pursue them." This reframing of my sacrifice as personal choice rather than family pressure ignored the consistent messages I had received about the importance of supporting Miguel and Isabella's education and career development while deferring my own aspirations for the sake of family stability. Her current narrative conveniently omitted the guilt, pressure, and emotional manipulation that had accompanied every attempt I had made to pursue independent goals or establish boundaries around family obligations. Miguel's contribution to the family pressure campaign focused primarily on financial manipulation, designed to create crisis situations that would force me to abandon the formal loan agreements and return to informal family assistance without accountability or repayment expectations. His approach involved creating artificial urgency around his career development needs while minimizing his responsibility for honoring the repayment terms we had established. "Elena, I have an incredible opportunity to tour with a major recording artist next month, but I need studio time to prepare demo recordings that will showcase my abilities," he explained during a call that interrupted my work on a complex insurance claim review. "This could be the breakthrough that establishes my career permanently, but I need $5,000 for studio rental and session musician costs." His request was strategically designed to trigger my historical pattern of supporting his musical aspirations while ignoring the $15,000 loan that remained largely unpaid, despite the formal repayment schedule we had established. The emergency nature of his request was intended to override my boundary requirements for advance notice and formal agreements governing any additional financial assistance. "Miguel, our current loan agreement specifies that any additional assistance would require formal documentation and collateral arrangements," I responded while managing patient appointment scheduling that could not be deferred for family financial discussions. "I am willing to discuss a separate loan for this opportunity, but it will need to be structured according to standard business practices rather than informal family assistance." His reaction to my professional approach to family financial matters revealed his assumption that my promotion should increase my capacity to provide support rather than requiring increased accountability and formal agreements. the possibility that my improved financial situation should benefit my own goals, and security rather than expanding family access to my resources seemed incomprehensible to him. Isabella's manipulation tactics proved to be more emotionally sophisticated than Miguel's financial pressure, focusing on relationship guilt and family loyalty themes designed to make my boundary setting appear selfish and damaging to family unity. Her approach involved positioning herself as the victim of my changed priorities, while characterizing my professional advancement as evidence of decreased love and commitment to family relationships. Elena, I feel like I have lost my sister since Christmas dinner, she said, during an emotional phone call that occurred during my lunch break when I was reviewing practice efficiency reports. You used to be available when I needed support and advice, but now everything has to be scheduled around your work responsibilities. It feels like your job is more important to you than our relationship. Her complaint ignored the reality that my previous availability had come at significant personal cost in terms of career development, financial security, and personal relationships outside the family. The scheduling requirements she resented were standard professional boundaries that enabled me to succeed in my expanded role while maintaining capacity for family relationships based on mutual respect rather than one-sided service. The most challenging aspect of Isabella's manipulation was her strategic use of extended family members and family friends to create social pressure around my boundary setting. She began sharing carefully edited versions of our family conflict with relatives and community members in ways designed to generate sympathy for her position while portraying my actions as unreasonable and hurtful. Elena has become very focused on money and career advancement since she got promoted, she told our Aunt Rosa during a conversation I learned about through other family members. She is requiring formal loan agreements for family assistance and scheduling our conversations around her work calendar instead of being available when we need support. It feels like she cares more about professional success than family relationships. This campaign of social manipulation was designed to isolate me from family and community support, while creating pressure for me to abandon the boundaries I had established. The effectiveness of this approach depended on family members and friends, lacking complete information about the history of exploitation and lack of appreciation that had necessitated my boundary setting. However, my growing confidence and external validation provided resilience against these manipulation tactics that would have been devastating during my previous period of family accommodation. Dr. Henderson's mentorship and the positive feedback I received from patients and colleagues reinforced my understanding that my professional advancement was appropriate and beneficial rather than selfish or damaging to legitimate relationships. The practice staff members who worked under my supervision provided particularly valuable perspective on the changes they observed in my confidence and leadership capabilities. Sarah Mitchell, the lead medical assistant who had worked at the ICI, practice for 8 years, offered insights about my professional development that contrasted sharply with my family's negative assessment of my advancement. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.